Sens fans, welcome to Season 4, Episode 13 of the Senstennial Podcast, a member of the Hockey Podcast Network. After a nice long holiday break, we are back at it. We have a new episode for you guys. On this week's episode, we're going to discuss Ottawa's roller coaster ride into 2023, the calendar year here, new year, but Sens are up and down, and we're going to talk about that. We'll also talk about the goaltending, the defense, what's going on with Ottawa's 5-on-5 play. Where do the answers lie? Who's to blame? We'll break all that down. And we're also going to talk about the upcoming Faces Magazine 2023 awards, which we've been nominated for, which is really exciting for Best Sports Podcast. And there's some tough competition in there, but we're honored to be a part of that list. And we'll touch on that in the second half of the show. So since we've recorded last, we've missed a bunch of games. So let's just hit you with a little recap. The Sens in their past 11 games over December and early January have gone 5-5-1, so about 500, and they're sitting 7 points out of a playoff spot. And that leads us to what to make of this Sens roster. And we'll kick things off with Ottawa's 5-on-5 play. It's been pretty bad or mediocre for quite some time now. When you look at the power play and penalty kill, Ottawa's currently sitting 5th in the NHL in their power play, 6th in the NHL with their penalty kill. Special teams have definitely not been the problem for this team, but their 5-on-5 play definitely has. So I'll kick it off to you, Bennett. And really, what's your takeaway been about Ottawa's 5-on-5 play over the last little stretch?
Yeah, it's been interesting because the Sens have not been getting drastically outshot in a lot of games. And you'll notice in yesterday's game against Nashville, despite the fact that we got shut out by a very informed UC Saros, we still put 30 plus shots up. We're generating a lot of chances. But what I'd be curious to know, and which I don't know off the top of my head, it would be the amount of high danger chances that we're creating, because I feel like a lot of the time we're getting pucks to the net, which is good, but I think that we're passing on genuine scoring chances in favor of the elusive perfect setup at times. And this is something that my wife and I have both commented on while watching games, is that I think there could be a little bit more directness in our play. I guess on the power play, it's been fine because we are scoring at a decent clip there, but especially 5-on-5, you really want to see guys just try and go for a dirty goal here and there or something, instead of trying to always like make the perfect cycle and set up the perfect one-timer or whatever it is. I'd really like to see a little bit more directness from the team. I think that would help. And I want to give a shout out to guys like Claude Giroux, is someone that we've talked about before, is able to do that. He is good at sensing when some of the younger guys on the team in particular, your Stutzels, your DeBrincats, I think if it's not like a 100%, complete golden pass that they receive, they don't want to shoot it. They want to try and set somebody else up. And Giroux will take those shots just to get something on, try and create a chance if Brady or someone can be hovering around to tap it in. And I think that that's something that the whole team could benefit from, especially at 5-on-5.
I think you're hitting all the right points, Bennett, but the big one that we haven't seen a lot of this season, and it's really hindering Ottawa as a team, is the lack of bottom six scoring. Obviously all of the injuries, even the top down, losing Norris immediately shifts Shane Pinto, our third line center, up. Losing Mott and Joseph, like suddenly a third line that we had at the start of the season is gone immediately.
A third line that had been producing pretty well, including at 5-on-5.
Absolutely. And then you have guys who, quite frankly, and I mean, you guys can probably agree here, is the fact that, does Austin Watson play on another NHL team if it's not the Ottawa Senators? Like, genuinely,
I could see like Arizona, maybe.
Yeah,
Philly.
Okay, I keep forgetting
Matt,
that they're.
He said NHL team. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
They play in a college arena. No knock. I think it's really cool, but anyways, I just see guys like, Parker Kelly, Austin Watson, Derek Brassard. Those guys, if
There's a
they're
lot
on
of warm
waivers,
bodies.
they're not getting picked up.
Yeah.
Now,
And
yeah, no,
I
sorry, finish your thought.
I'm just this is where I struggle here because your fourth line should have value. And I think personally, a guy like Kastelik would be picked up. He's a 6'3", 6'4" center, amazing at faceoffs, fights, and is actually quite fast. And we're going to talk about how fast he is at some point, but I think he brings value to the team. A guy like Jake Lucchini is bringing value to the fourth and third line. I haven't heard about Chartier at all. I think did they send him down?
I
Uh,
think he's still injured, but I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
he's on the shelf right now.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, Louise. We're just being hammered by injuries and just, meh players. And then you go and look at Seattle picking up Ely Tolvanen, who is now 5 games with 5 points. And it really makes you wonder as a team that's looking for ways to win, buy low on guys. That is a guy that screams, pick him up because look what he's doing now with the right opportunity.
And that's a
It's
guy who I honestly thought when your guys come back from injuries, you plop him on your third line, say with Pinto and Joseph, and then on your
yeah,
fourth line, you can put Mott there, and then Mott,
yeah.
Kastelik, and I don't know, whoever you put in that right wing spot, say Lucchini, like that would be a very fast and I think pretty defensively responsible fourth line. And going back to even talking about the third line and the problems with depth, I think it all starts with that Norris injury. And I'm pretty sure I brought it up on the podcast before. But before Norris got injured, you know how many points per game that third line was at?
I do not.
They were point per game. And I think that it's because the first and second lines were getting the tougher matchups. And then other teams would run out of depth to compete with a line of Mott, Pinto, and Joseph. And that was just a really effective third line. As soon as you move Pinto up into the top 6, well, now that third line is not nearly as infected, God, effective. It seems like they're infected by the injury bug, if anything. But yeah, they're not nearly as effective because then you're moving. They kept Kastelik on the fourth line from what I recall, and then you put a guy like Derek Brassard in or God Gambrell, and it's just not the same, and they're not getting the same production. They're not getting the same effectiveness of that line, and I think that definitely contributes to the lack of effectiveness at 5-on-5 that we've seen from Ottawa's bottom 6. And I mean, that's just one thing, but
It's a microcosm of everything that's happening, but you do
yeah.
need more from your bottom 6, and guys that should be producing aren't, and guys that should be there are hurt. And going to your point about Mott being on the fourth line, that's where he was supposed to be, barring the Alex Fermenton situation not being signed and all that. But Mott is not it's like he shouldn't be on a third line considering his production. He's probably going to get you 25 points a season, and that's fine for a fringe third liner, fourth line guy. So we're just seeing the issues of a roster that probably should have been touched up just a little more or formulated as the season's been going on. But as I said, Austin Watson, Parker Kelly, those are guys that probably aren't getting picked up on waivers. And if that's the case, then it's probably time to move on.
Now we've touched on the forward core, but do you think that some of the struggles, and I'm sure I can guess what the answers are, does some of the blame lie with the defensive core in all of this? Because, obviously the bottom 6 hasn't been great, but I think you can point some fingers at some other players on maybe the blue line that also haven't been too swell.
I think you can always point to the defense when the Sens are struggling. And luckily, it hasn't been because of Nikita Zaitsev recently. I know he's injured for the foreseeable future after playing pretty decent minutes when he came back. However, we're now seeing the age creeping up with Nick Holden. I know Travis Hamonic is this year's whipping boy, but rightfully so. He has not been good. There were a couple plays yesterday that he just absolutely biffed, and it led to a prime scoring opportunity. You can't have a guy like that be an absolute anchor for your young up and coming stud defenseman. Look what's happening in Detroit with Ben Sherratt and Moritz Seider. Seider looks human again, and not like a good one either. And then you have Thomas Chabot sort of coming back in his play. It's nice to have Zub there because they make a great tandem, but they still screw up too, and have been screwing up a little more so recently. And then, of course, last night against the Nashville Predators, Eric Brandstrom had a really silly turnover that could have been avoided, and he was absolutely torched for it.
And he ended up actually being benched. And after that took place, because I was in attendance for that game, DJ started to shuffle the defensive combos. Like, I believe at one point Brandstrom took a shift with Sanderson, Holden and Hamonic rode at one point together. Then it was like Holden and Zub or something. I don't know. They were flipping guys around a lot to try and, I guess, muster up something. But as we know, that game, Ottawa didn't really muster up anything after the first 10 minutes and that disallowed Brady goal.
It's a frustrating thing to be watching when you see what could be, but changes need to be made.
True. And I'd like Bennett. I always love when you weigh in, because I think that Matt and I can be fairly diplomatic, but I think you like to go for the jugular sometimes. So any thoughts on the defensive core?
I have plenty of thoughts. I mean, I feel like I've voiced most of those on this podcast already this season. I mean, we know that guys like Hamonic are not really cut out to be a player in anything other than like a very sheltered third line role, and preferably just a seventh defenseman on the team. Holden, we've all cited it this year. It looks like age is catching up to him at 35. And he was never a fantastic defender, but he was reliable. Now he's less reliable, and also still doesn't really bring anything offensively. So that's not a good combination. And speaking of not reliable and not bringing it offensively, that's Eric Brandstrom. I mean, I know that we all want to see him succeed. The Sens as an organization have a lot riding on his success. We've been saying that for years, but I know that DJ is not a big fan of his, and he doesn't always get big minutes, but he's not, he's playing, between 10 and 7, between 12 and 17 minutes a night. He's played for 35 games and he has 3 assists, and that's not that different from his stat line last season, which we all said was not good enough and didn't show any growth, and we're still not seeing any growth. I really think that when you're a defenseman, there's sort of not a lot of value in being a guy whose game relies on moving the puck and skating well, but you don't score. And then, you also don't really do the defense first stuff that bigger, perhaps less talented guys do, say Zub or guys of that kind of shutdown nature. It's just he's not really doing the offensive defenseman stuff, and he's not really doing the defensive defenseman stuff, is what I was actually trying to say here. And that's generally not a good position to be in as a defender. There's not a lot of value in guys who can show flashes of offensive ability but are not defensively responsible. It's you either have to be consistently offensively productive, like a Chabot, or even perhaps a Sanderson, who shows those flashes but is also defensively sound on a night in, night out basis. And I mean, I don't think it's controversial to say that our best defender this season absolutely has been Jake Sanderson. I mean, every single game I see him do something smart and proactive that breaks up a attacking play of the other teams before it materializes into a scoring chance. Every game, just if every game I see Travis Hamonic do the opposite, get burned, get done by somebody on the other team and lead to a scoring chance. It's that's the sort of the two spectrums of our defensive play right now. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And looking at, like, I have a Hockey Viz subscription, and Michael Blake McCurdy does some great work there.
friend of the show.
Friend of the show at Ineffective Math on Twitter if you're interested. But he does the heat maps that show like how much offense a player is generating and how much offense they're suppressing in their own zone and stuff like that to simplify it. But yeah, no, your eye test is pretty spot on. It looks like Zub and Sanderson have been our better defenders this year if you're looking at just the D zone. Brandstrom actually slides in at the number 3 spot in terms of his defensive prowess on the team, but I don't think that says much when some of the guys on the team aren't really, pulling their weight in multiple categories. But anyway, Hamonic, and I know you mentioned he was the whipping boy. I really want players who are new to the team to succeed. I never want to cheer against a player. So when Ottawa got Hamonic, I was like, this is really weird, but let's see how it unfolds. Sadly, you look at any forward, any defenseman on the roster, Hamonic has, without a doubt, analytically been their worst player. And, there's been games where he's had key blocks that have led to Ottawa getting an empty netter. I believe it was against Buffalo, where he had that really nice block, and it led to Watson being able to bury that like 200-foot empty netter or whatever it was, 100-foot. And, stuff like that is key for sure. But he's just not good enough in the defensive end. And I think it does cost the team. With Brandstrom, I think he's kind of like an upgraded Victor Mete, which isn't what you want to get when you trademark Stone. But I mean, it's been so long since that trade. You just kind of got to look at him separately from Stone and just see what you have with him. And what you have is a guy who has speed. He can transition the puck fairly well for the most part. I know he had that really bad giveaway against Nashville. But when he's in the offensive zone, like, he gets power play minutes, he gets zone time, and he just doesn't get points. And I know sometimes he makes good feeds and then a forward can't finish the play, but it, like you said, it's been, almost 40 games and he has 3 assists. And it's just, I don't understand how a player who has the speed, who has, the transition capability that he does, just doesn't translate to the scoreboard. And so, yeah, I think that, while he does provide a bit of defense, not a ton, because of his size and stature and his depiction as being more of an offensive minded defenseman, that because he's not providing that in that category, that he's kind of an odd man out on the defensive core. And I don't think he'll be with the Sens once he, like, either this summer or maybe the following year. I think they might just not qualify him and let him walk into free agency. So we'll see.
I think with Brandstrom, you don't notice him that much anymore, which as a defender isn't the worst problem to have in the world. I think he's been solid this season. However, like, I don't know about you guys, but as soon as he made that play, everybody trade Brandstrom, get rid of him, never want him again, and then you even have the coach saying, it's hard to come back from such a bad turnover or something to that effect. And I don't know about you guys, but if that's my boss, my manager, what have you, and he's pinpointing one exact play and it's on you, that's it. You've lost me. Like, I'm not coming back from that, because like, to a point, we've seen how DJ Smith coaches, and it's not getting better for Brandstrom. He is never going to get out of that guy's doghouse. And it's quite unfortunate, because I'd really like to see how he flourishes under a different style of coach. It genuinely makes you wonder what Brandstrom could possibly look like under a coach who actually knows how to coach defense. I've seen anecdotal stuff where, they go down to Trent Mann, Lassie Thompson, JBD, even Zaitsev, when they came up and they were much better defensively. And some people were saying it's just a part of Trent Mann's or Troy Mann's coaching style. He knows how to coach defensemen really well. And it's quite frustrating that a coach who was a defensive coach on the Maple Leafs is struggling to do it with the Ottawa Senators. I don't know. Like I'm always going to come back to the fire DJ thing because I'm kind of just sick of them. I think we're a middling franchise with a coach who probably can't take us to the next step, but we're frustrated because this is all it's ever been for the last 4 years. And we lose to 2 teams that we should beat. And, this is where we're at. What the heck is up, Sens fans? The NFL playoff picture is locked in, and my go-to place for wildcard round action betting is DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. To kick off the road to Super Bowl 57, new customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Plus, all new and existing customers can get a no-sweat bet each day of the wildcard round this weekend. Just place any NFL bet of your choice, and if it loses, you'll get a free bet backup up to $10. Action's so good, why bet NFL playoffs anywhere else? I've been really liking the DraftKings Sportsbook. It's been really consistent, good money lines, everything you need for those sweet Sens victories. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. New customers can bet $5 on the NFL and get $200 in free bets instantly. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with the code THPN. Have a good one, Sens fans.
All right, welcome back to the show. And after that great little tangent there by Matt, love that. Got some passion in there. We're going to turn our attention to the netminders and how much criticism guys like Cam Talbot and Anton Forsberg deserve. And Ben, I'll start off with you. The goaltending at times has been absolutely on point. Starting off 2023, you had Anton Forsberg have 1 goal against and then have a shutout, and looked like, okay, damn, this tandem of Forsberg Talbot is looking hot. When one guy's not feeling it, the other guy's on top of his game. But then we see the last couple of games where, 8 goals against, 3 on Forsberg and 5 on Talbot. And then, they end up losing a 3-0 game to Nashville, and an okay game from Talbot. But, what are your thoughts on goaltending and how much criticism do they deserve?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because in the last few seasons, particularly when Matt Murray was around, I mean, goaltending was one of the biggest anchors that was holding this team down from being competitive, not even just like hunting a playoff spot, but just competitive, full stop, like participating in games as opposed to just getting styled on relentlessly. And I would say that goaltending has absolutely not been a problem this year, but it hasn't necessarily been an asset either. I mean, our goaltending has been exactly league average, like within a percentage point or 2 of the league average is our, team save percentage. So it's not helping us, but it's not hurting us. So it's in a bit of a funny spot right now. If our Talbot and Forsberg, they've been serviceable. They've not been amazing. They've each picked up a shutout. They have almost nearly identical save percentage and goals against numbers. They're both hovering around 900 in save percentage. They're both hovering around 3 goals against. Again, that's average. That's neither bad nor spectacular. Talbot has a slightly better quality start percentage at 0.714 versus Forsberg at 0.556. It means, theoretically, Talbot's giving you better quality, a better chance to win the games that he's in, but not decisively so, just a little bit better. So yeah, it's if our save percentage as a team and by the 2 goaltenders together was say like 10% better, even, let's say shoot for the moon 20% better, that could very well be the difference between a playoff spot or not. So I think ultimately, if the Sens are to succeed long term, they're going to need better goaltending than what we're getting at this moment. But it's not totally sinking us, like it has in seasons past. So for now, I would say I'm content with it, but knowing that neither of these guys are going to be the answer, 5 years from now, I don't think.
Now, other Matt, you're our resident goaltender expert. Has there been, yeah, nice. Has there been any differences that you've seen between games? Any stylistic differences, or do you think it's just kind of a consistency thing, or how the team plays in front of them? What's your take on the goaltending?
Stylistically speaking, I actually noticed that Forsberg has been doing a technique that I haven't actually seen in the NHL in some years. I'm gonna give you a little goalie near breakdown here. When you see a goalie with their pad down and their chest lined with the post to sort of cover those corner shots, that's referred to as an RVH. But what Forsberg has been doing a little more recently is he has his pad up on that post and then covering the bottom side. If I'm on the right post, his right leg is on that post, and his left leg is on the ice. And he's got his glove activated. It's a bit more active of a technique, and you get burned a lot less over that close shoulder. And I've actually been wondering if our goaltending coach has been sort of wanting our goalies to do that more. And I've really only noticed it with Forsberg as opposed to Talbot, who relies on the RVH a little more. With that said, that's neither here nor there. There's a lot of goalies that do get burned on RVH, and you have to wonder, maybe Forsberg's just a little more comfortable with it, but it's a more it saves more percentage shots than the RVH does. So I don't know. Forsberg, I personally like Forsberg's game just a little bit more than I do Talbot's. Um, Obviously, we're here to talk about the last two games, being Seattle 8-4 and then losing to Nashville 3-0. Talking about the Seattle game, I genuinely thought Talbot was the worst goalie out of the two that played. And I know people are going to be like, well, Forsberg got pulled. And absolutely. But I watched the three goals that went in, and two of them were perfect shots. Forsberg could not stop the first goal, period. That was going in, and that's life. The second one was poor defending by both our forwards in defense. And the third one was a flubber shot that Hamonic, like propped up, and it bounced up over Forsberg after hitting him and went into the net. It's a very odd, like, sort of sequence of events that led to Forsberg's pulling, but I wouldn't put that on him. Then when it came to Talbot, I thought he was a little more rusty and a little less activated in the net. And coming into games, that's definitely more tough, being a backup going into a game. I like Talbot's game against Nashville. I wouldn't put much of anything on him there. I did see a tweet that said this isn't NHL goaltending, and it was the wraparound goal. And I actually I watched the clip, and I actually faulted Giroux on some of it there, because he did not back check well enough to cover that left hand side. So the goaltending's been up and down all season. We obviously would like to see more consistent starts from our guys, but I think you're going to start seeing the guys sharing the load a bit more, because it's been Talbot a lot, and then Forsberg gets a start, has a hot start, he gets another start, doesn't do well, and then gets pulled. So I think we're going to see a bit more back and forth with the two guys, but I think they're just a product of their defense. Philip Gustafsson rightfully called out it's easier to make saves in Minnesota than it is Ottawa. And I don't blame him, because our defensive structure hasn't been there, and our core is not as strong as Minnesota's. So Does Gustafsson have the same season in Minnesota that if he was in Ottawa? Absolutely not, because we're different teams. But I think Forsberg would put up better numbers if he was in Minnesota. But that's just my opinion.
No, that was a great breakdown. And I feel like we should get you a little goalie net to go behind your camera so that when you act out all these things, you can actually just, get off there and go show the
like
positioning.
TNT and all that.
Yeah. When NFL does those halftime shows and the guys are like, running up to the screens and stages and stuff. Yeah. So that's kind of a not a great way to start off our 2023 with the Sens not playing well. But for us here at the podcast ourselves, we've had a great little start to 2023. And, it started out by finding out that for the 2023 Faces Magazine Awards for Ottawa, that we'd actually been nominated for Best Sports Podcast. And that's really exciting. And like I said off the top of the show, there's some really good podcasts that are in there as well. I'm sure you can go down the list and everybody listening or watching would know at least a few of the names. And yeah, we're just honored to be a part of that. And I'm not sure who nominated us because we definitely didn't do it. So thank you so much to whoever in the community liked our show enough to actually nominate us. That's really cool. And you'll be seeing us kind of advertise voting for that a little bit more frequently on social media. I believe the voting opens up on January 15th. So leading up to January 15th, and then on that date itself and afterwards, we'll promote it a little bit on our Twitter and social medias. So Twitter, it's at Senstennial, and on YouTube, Instagram, and Reddit, it's the Senstennial. So follow us on our platforms and try and get the word out. We really want to get some votes and win or no win. We're just happy to be there, and it's exciting for us. And thank you for joining us on the ride and for supporting the show. We just wanted to get that out there. But moving back to the Ottawa Senators and getting out of the trenches, I guess, of our previous conversation, we're going to talk about the Sens skills competition. I know Bennett wanted to touch on these things, and we talked about Kaslik and how fast he really is. So we'll dive into that.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I just wanted to touch on it briefly because it's a little fun interruption at this right after the holidays that the Sens do every year. I had the opportunity to go. My father-in-law and I had great seats. We were second row up, so we were right beside the bench. It was pretty cool. And yeah, it was cool to see some of the players get to relax and unwind a little bit, as well as show off skills that you don't always necessarily realize they have in their locker. I think most surprising for me was, of course, you mentioned it, Mark Kaslik winning the fastest skater competition for the team. I think people will note that Timmy blew a tire in the last bend, so it's possible that had he been going full tilt, he might have edged Kaslik. But fair play to Mark. He is fast, and he was really milking his victory. It was fun to see. Drake Batherson and Thomas Chabot went down to the wire for the hardest shot competition, with Batherson just having the edge. But yeah, just another. I mean, Batherson is such a versatile player. We know that he's an incredibly gifted playmaker. He's got a great shot. In addition to having a great wrister, we got to see him unload a few slappers, and obviously he cracked the 100-kilometer-an-hour mark. I assume it's kilometers. At least
no, it's mile an hour.
It really is miles. Okay,
yeah.
I was gonna say anyway. So he cracked the 100-mile-an-hour mark, which is obviously a pretty big benchmark. So that was cool to see. And Josh Norris, who, as we've mentioned, has been injured for most of the season. He's been a big loss to the team. Was well enough to participate in the skills competition, which is good. We know that he might not be close to returning just yet, but he's not bedridden either, so that's that's positive at least. But he and Shane Pinto both had fantastic times in the shooting accuracy competition, where they shoot the targets in the corners. Shane Pinto actually, there's a bit of a mix-up. They didn't record his time properly in the moment, but he did it in about 7 seconds. He didn't miss a shot. He just went boom, 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 boom. And people hadn't seen that done since Daniel Sedin did it in an All-Star game.
It's a league record.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy. If it happened at, an All-Star game, it would have gotten more hubbub, obviously, as opposed to like the team only skills competition. But man, like crazy, like he's such a talented guy. And after that, there's the passing competition. I was getting a slice of pizza, so I honestly don't know who won that. But yeah, then a fun little bit of 3-on-3 at the end. And just want to say as well, lastly, before I wrap here, Brady Tkachuk is such a fun, charismatic guy, and he really shines at events like this. Other players were hamming it up too and having fun, Holden, a lot of like the dads on the team, like Holden, Giroux, the older guys, like they were having fun with it too, but Brady, I mean, it's just like everything. I mean, like, they won the little trophy at the end for his team, and there were some local youth hockey players that were participating in the skills competition as well. And he left all of like the actual Sens players like on the sidelines and brought the kids up to come pose with the trophy for the camera and everything.
Oh, that's great.
Hilariously, Zub like made a motion to like join and get in the background with the kids, but then he was kind of like laughed and like went back to the lineup. But anyway, it's just cool to see. I mean, Brady, in addition to being a very good hockey player, is also just a great ambassador for the team. And he's great with the kiddies and in interviews and all of that stuff. It's just it's cool. And yeah, just a reminder that this team's fun and the players that we have are fun and cool. And even if the results are always coming on the ice, it's still fun being a Sens fan. And it's good that we can say that again, because for a couple of years it wasn't that fun to be a Sens fan.
Yeah, and I also thought it was cool that they got the Women's Hockey Association involved. And brought them in.
Jamie Lee Rattray, another Earl of March alumni, like Matt and myself. So yeah.
Hell yeah. You'll love to see it.
Yeah. We have slightly fewer gold medals than she does, which is to say none. But
we're working on it. We're working on it.
We'll get there one day. Yeah. If they ever start giving out gold medals for dry wit and knowledge about fake history from fantasy universes, then I'm gonna be on that podium.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for listening or watching to this week's episode. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll catch you in the next one. Go Sens go. Hopefully they kind of turn things around and make a push for those playoffs. Tough matchups coming our way. So thanks everybody, and see you next time.
See you on the other side.
Go Sens go.